Chapter 1. The Man Nobody Notices. Most people who crossed paths with Marvin, Ray never remembered him. Not because he was dull or forgettable, far from it, but because he had spent half his life training himself to be unseen. Blending in, shrinking presence, tightening expression, controlling breath, all habits from a world he wasn't allowed to talk about. In the kitchen that morning, the only sounds were the soft ticking of the clock and his wife's irritated sighs as she scrolled her phone. "Wear the dark suit," Nain said without looking at him. "The one that doesn't draw attention." Marvin paused mid-buttoning his shirt. "For the gala?" "For the gala," she echoed flatly. Obviously, he waited, giving her room to explain, but she didn't. She only kept scrolling, lips tight, eyes hard. He tried again. "Is there a theme? Black tie? Business? It doesn't matter." She cut him off. "You're not going as my husband." Her thumb flicked across the screen again. A donor list? A seating chart? Messages she didn't want him seeing? "You'll be my bodyguard tonight," she said. "Still no eye contact. Just stand behind me and don't talk. I need to look professional." Marvin let the words settle. A less trained man might have flinched. He didn't. Instead, he finished buttoning his shirt slowly, methodically, controlling his breath the way his instructors had hammered into him years ago. "You want me to pretend I'm hired help," he said quietly. "Not pretend," she snapped. "Just blend in. Do what you're good at." What he was good at, not being seen. The irony wasn't lost on him. She finally looked up then, and the flash of annoyance in her eyes was painfully familiar. "Don't give me that look, Marvin. This is important. These people, donors, sponsors, diplomats, they take impressions seriously. I can't have you." She gestured vaguely toward him, hovering like some misplaced spouse. He almost smiled at that. Of all the things he had been called, operative, strategist, ghost, sentinel, misplaced spouse was a new one. But she was wrong. He hadn't hovered. He had simply existed beside her in the quiet way she once claimed made her feel safe. That was years ago. That was before the distance, before the clipped tone, before the late nights and whispered texts and cold shoulders. He adjusted his cufflinks, took a slow breath. "If that's what you want." "It is." She shot back too quickly. "I need everything to go smoothly tonight. No mistakes, not even tiny ones." Marvin nodded. Understood. He turned toward the hallway, but her voice followed him like a thrown dagger. "And Marvin," he stopped. "Don't introduce yourself as my husband. If anyone asks, just say you're security." He didn't turn around, didn't let her see even a flicker of the exhaustion in his eyes. Of course, security. A title people used to whisper with respect when referring to him. Now, it was a mask, a downgraded role to make room for her ambitions. He walked to the bedroom and closed the door gently behind him. Inside, he sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. He studied the carpet for a long moment, letting a slow breath out through his nose. There was a time Nain sought his advice, a time she admired his judgment, his discipline, the calm confidence that came from surviving places where other men didn't. Now she avoided his gaze. Now she treated him like a weight dragging her down. He reached into the nightstand drawer and pulled out an old photograph. The two of them on their wedding day, her bright smile, his steady arm around her shoulders, both of them younger, hopeful, believing they were choosing forever. He placed the picture face down. His phone buzzed on the bed. A message from Nain. "Be ready by 6. And try to look serious." Marvin exhaled, part laugh, part sigh. He had spent 20 years in operations where seriousness meant the difference between breathing or bleeding out on foreign soil. But sure, tonight he would try. He stood, changed into the suit she preferred, the one that muted him even more than usual. He stripped away anything that might draw attention, watch, cufflinks, ring, slipping into the role she wanted. A shadow behind her. A silent figure in a room full of wealthy noise. A man nobody notices. As he tightened the last button of his jacket, he caught his reflection in the mirror. The same calm, unreadable expression he had worn through war zones and interrogation rooms stared back at him. He had sensed the shift in her long before she ever voiced it. The thinning patience, the clipped replies, the way she smiled at her phone but rarely at him. Emotional distance is subtle at first, like a door closing inch by inch. Then one day you realize it's shut completely. He slipped his phone into his pocket and walked out to the living room. Nain stood by the door in an elegant navy gown, looking him over with the critical eye of someone checking a prop before placing it on stage. "You look fine," she said. Not impressed, not touched, just assessing. She grabbed her clutch. "Let's go. And remember, tonight, you're not Marvin Ray. You're just my bodyguard." He opened the door for her. "Of course," he said softly. And he meant it, even if it stung in a place he didn't let anyone see. Chapter 2. Stand behind me and don't talk. The German embassy gala glowed like a polished jewel in the night. Glass, gold light, and the hum of expensive conversations drifting out onto the courtyard. Cars pulled up in orderly intervals, releasing people wrapped in silk, tuxedos, and self-importance. Marvin stepped out behind Nain, adjusting the sleeve of the dark suit she insisted he wear. He looked exactly how she wanted, sharp, quiet, unnoticed. Nain didn't wait for him to join her side. She was already halfway up the steps, smiling brightly at the check-in staff as if she owned the marble beneath her heels. When he reached her, she turned briefly, her expression sharpening. "Remember," she murmured without moving her lips much, "just stay close and don't talk unless someone directly asks you something." "Understood," Marvin said. She didn't check if he meant it. She assumed. Inside, the reception hall was alive with chandelier glow and polished accents, German precision draped over diplomatic glamour. A string quartet filled the air with smooth, calculated charm. Nain straightened her posture instantly, slipping into her public persona. Confident, polished, ambitious. The version of herself she liked best. "Oh, Mrs. Ray." A donor, silver hair, diamond brooch, beamed as she approached. Nain lifted her chin. "Good evening, Mrs. Harlow. So glad you could make it." Marvin stepped behind her to the right, his shadow position. Mrs. Harlow glanced at him and asked, "And this is?" Nain's hand shot subtly toward Marvin's arm, not to bring him forward, but to push him half a step back. "Just my security detail tonight," she said lightly. "Long event. Embassy wants us to be cautious." Marvin kept his expression perfectly neutral. Mrs. Harlow nodded politely and turned her full attention back to Nain. "Well, you look absolutely stunning, dear. I must introduce you to the European donors near the gallery section." "I would love that," Nain said warmly. "Lead the way." They walked, or rather Mrs. Harlow walked, and Nain glided beside her. Marvin followed at a precise pace, the pace of a bodyguard, not a husband. He moved silently, scanning exits, reading the room. Force of habit. And that's when he noticed him. Ahmad Stein, the embassy's senior cultural coordinator. Dark suit, slick smile, the kind of posture that tried too hard to look effortless. He stood across the room speaking with the curator, but his eyes kept darting back to Nain. Not to the crowd, not to the donors, just to her. Marvin watched the tiny flicks of Ahmed's eyes, the faint smirk that curved at the corner of his mouth whenever she shifted closer. Then, as Nain turned slightly during her conversation with two German philanthropists, Ahmed's gaze brightened. He excused himself from the curator with a polite nod and moved through the crowd with an easy, practiced charm. Nain saw him approaching, her reaction subtle yet unmistakable. Her shoulders relaxed. Her smile softened. Her eyes lit briefly, then dimmed just as fast, like someone remembering they shouldn't look too pleased. Ahmad reached them smoothly. "Mrs. Ray," he greeted, voice warm. "You look exceptional tonight." Nain tilted her head in a modest performance gesture. "Thank you, Ahmad. The event is beautiful. You bring beauty to it," he said lightly. Mrs. Harlow blinked at the forwardness, but said nothing. Marvin stood still, unreadable, the perfect bodyguard silhouette. Ahmad glanced at him only once, an almost dismissive flick. "Your security seems very dedicated." "He's reliable," Nain answered quickly. Too quickly. Ahmed's lips twitched. "Good. Tonight's guest list is sensitive." The way he said sensitive wasn't professional. It was performative, like an inside joke only he and Nain understood. Nain lowered her voice. "We'll talk later." It was soft, intimate, the kind of tone people use when they don't want others to notice the familiarity. But Marvin noticed everything. Every micro-expression, every shift in posture, every whisper threaded with subtext. He had been trained to read runes the way others read books. Still, he stayed behind her, silent, precisely where she ordered him. Ahmed's eyes flicked sideways again toward her, this time paired with a smile that was too personal for a diplomatic event. A whispered, "I'll find you later," slipped from him as he leaned in slightly. Nain didn't push him away. She didn't recoil. She didn't even blush in guilt. She simply smiled back, small, controlled, but unmistakably warm. It lasted half a second. Long enough. Then she turned to greet a new cluster of donors, her hand brushing Marvin's arm in that same dismissive way, more of a signal to reposition him than any form of affection. Marvin moved 2 steps back. Ahmad lingered another moment, giving Nain one last glance before disappearing into the crowd. Marvin's gaze followed him until he was gone. He noticed everything, but he said nothing. Chapter 3, The Ambassador Stops Mid-Speech. Ambassador Klaus Werner stood at the center of the raised platform, hands folded behind his back, the German and American flags forming a dignified backdrop. The hall quieted as he approached the microphone. Conversations tapered into soft murmurs. Crystal glasses stilled. Donors angled their bodies toward the stage. Nain glowed. She loved this part of events, the speeches, the attention, the polished choreography of prestige. She positioned herself near a prominent group of European art patrons, making sure she was visible. Marvin stood slightly behind her, his posture relaxed but precise. The perfect nonentity. Ambassador Werner cleared his throat, smiled warmly, and began. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. It is our honor to host this annual Cultural Partnership Gala. Tonight, we celebrate not only art and diplomacy, but collaboration." The crowd responded with polite applause. Marvin kept his gaze scanning the room, mapping exits, noting details no one else bothered with. The clinking glasses near the bar. The security guards, actual security, rotating quietly near the entrances. Ahmad Stein hovering near a marble column, pretending to be busy with a conversation he wasn't really listening to, his eyes darting to Nain every few seconds. Ambassador Werner continued, gesturing with the ease of a seasoned diplomat. "In our shared commitment to strengthening ties between our nations," people nodded, smiling, sipping champagne. Then it happened. Mid-sentence, the ambassador's words faltered. As we commemorate, his voice caught. He blinked, his head tilted slightly, like he'd seen something impossible. The guests shifted uneasily. Marvin stayed still. Ambassador Werner's gaze locked on him, directly on him from across the room. Nain felt the shift. She glanced at Marvin with annoyance, as if he had somehow disrupted the speech by breathing incorrectly. Ambassador Werner went silent, dead silent. Then, in a sharp movement, he stepped away from a microphone and began descending the platform stairs. The room murmured, "Is something wrong? Did he forget his notes? What's happening?" Nain stiffened. "What is he doing?" Marvin didn't answer. Werner walked briskly, no hesitation, no confusion, no politeness, straight through the crowd. People parted automatically, startled by the sudden focus and intensity etched across the diplomat's face. Ahmed's eyes snapped toward Marvin. His expression changed instantly. Recognition? Fear? Marvin watched his posture tighten, jaw clench. Werner reached the group, where Marvin stood and stopped right in front of him. The entire hall quieted, breath held, confused. And then it happened. Ambassador Werner straightened, heels clicking together, and executed a crisp, formal salute. Directly at Marvin. Gasps rippled outward like a shockwave. Nain's world cracked in real time. Her eyes widened, her breath hitched, her spine turned rigid. Marvin returned the salute with slow precision. He hadn't done that gesture in years, not since leaving the life he couldn't talk about. Werner dropped his hand. "My apologies, ladies and gentlemen," he said loudly, turning toward the stunned audience. "I did not realize we had a guest of such distinction in attendance." Dozens of heads swiveled toward Marvin. Stillness swept across the room. Werner turned back to Marvin, his voice respectful and firm. "It is an honor, sir. You should have informed us you were here. We would have arranged appropriate accommodations." Nan looked like she might choke. What is happening?" she whispered. Werner addressed the room again, projecting his voice with ceremony. "Many of you may not recognize him, but some of us who have worked closely with U.S. intelligence operations certainly do." He gestured toward Marvin. This man served as one of the DIA's sentinels. A collective inhale. The donors who had ignored Marvin before now stared like they were seeing a mythical creature. Werner continued, reverent. "One of the most elite intelligence strategists the United States has ever deployed. A man whose contributions shaped operations we are still benefiting from today." Marvin remained still, calm, neutral. Nane's face went ghostly pale. Her lips parted, but no words emerged. Ahmad looked like someone had kicked the ground out from under him. His body locked up, shoulders stiff, eyes narrowing in alarm. The man who had spent the evening smirking suddenly stood frozen, calculating. Werner clasped Marvin's hand firmly. "Thank you for your service." Truly, the ballroom erupted into murmurs. "Sentinel, he's one of them. How do we not know? Why didn't she introduce him? Oh my God, her husband?" Nane swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to maintain her polite facade. But her eyes betrayed her, a mixture of horror, confusion, and something that looked almost like panic. Marvin said nothing. He didn't need to. In a matter of seconds, the room that had dismissed him now revolved around him, and nothing, absolutely nothing, felt the same anymore. Chapter 4, The Whisper Network Panic. The moment Ambassador Werner stepped back onto the stage, the ballroom transformed. The music resumed, the servers passed trays of champagne, and conversations restarted, but they weren't the same. They were sharper, faster, hungrier. The gala had a new center of gravity, and it wasn't Nane anymore. It was Marvin. Clusters of donors leaned toward each other, whispering behind manicured hands. "Did you hear what Werner called him? A sentinel? Is that real? She said he was her bodyguard. Why hide someone like that?" Nane's cheeks burned red beneath her makeup. She forced a smile at two donors approaching. "Mrs. Ray." A tall Frenchman greeted her, excitement in his eyes. "Why didn't you tell us your husband was decorated intelligence?" Nane froze for half a beat. "Well, you know how it is, privacy, classified things, but you introduced him as security." The man pressed lightly, confused. "Oh, that was just for fun," she lied, laughing too loudly. "A joke." Obviously, he didn't look convinced. A woman beside him leaned in, voice low. "Is it true? He's one of those off-book strategists." "Sentinels," the Frenchman corrected. "Quite rare." Nane's smile tightened. "I didn't want to make the night about him." The donors exchanged a look. "Well," the woman said carefully, "it seems the ambassador disagreed." They drifted away politely, leaving Nane standing alone, swallowing humiliation. Across the room, another group was whispering. She pretended he was hired help. Imagine disrespecting someone like that. It makes her look insecure. Meanwhile, Ahmad Stein, normally a social butterfly, kept himself glued to the far side of the hall, eyes fixed anywhere except Marvin or Nane. He gave off the energy of a man who had just spotted a landmine and was trying not to step near it. Nane saw this and moved quickly toward him. "Ahmad," she whispered sharply as she reached his side. "Why are you avoiding me?" He took a slow sip of wine. "I'm not avoiding you. I'm recalibrating." "Recalibrating what?" she hissed. Ahmed's eyes flicked toward Marvin, who stood several feet away, speaking to no one, yet surrounded by an invisible circle of stunned respect. "You didn't tell me he was that Marvin Ray." "I didn't know," she insisted, voice cracking. "He never told me." Ahmed's jaw clenched. Of course he didn't. People like him don't talk unless ordered to. Nane grabbed his sleeve. "It doesn't change anything. It changes everything." Ahmad cut in, lowering his voice. "Excuse me, Nane. I need to handle something." He slipped away, leaving her floundering. Marvin stood near the balcony doors, hands loosely clasped behind him. He kept his breathing calm, rhythm steady, old training kicking in automatically now that eyes were on him. Then a voice behind him murmured, "Ray?" Marvin turned. A man in his 50s approached, hair streaked with gray, posture still military sharp. Didn't think I'd run into you here. Hello, Anders, Marvin said. The former liaison officer clapped his shoulder gently. Werner almost had a heart attack when he recognized you. You should have warned someone. Marvin offered a small shrug. Didn't plan on being recognized. Still like a ghost, Anders laughed. But the laugh faded quickly. He looked around to ensure no one was close enough to overhear, then leaned in. You're an interesting company tonight. Marvin waited. You see that man? Anders nodded subtly toward Ahmad across the hall. The slick one with the tailored suit and diplomatic badge. I see him. He's been on a few radars lately. Unofficial radars. Marvin didn't move, but something in his eyes sharpened. Anders lowered his voice further. He's connected, loosely, to Harlan Schaefer. Marvin's reaction was nearly microscopic, but Anders noticed. Yeah, Anders continued. That's Schaefer, the one Treasury's been poking at. The art billionaire with the questionable shipments. And Ahmad is tied to him, Marvin asked quietly. Tied enough that people are paying attention, Anders said. Whispers about laundering channels, high-end galleries, diplomatic immunity loopholes. Marvin's jaw tightened just slightly. Anders studied him a moment. Didn't think you'd want to be anywhere near that kind of mess again. But if that man is circling your wife, he let the sentence trail off. Marvin remained calm, expression unreadable, but inside the pieces began rearranging themselves, quietly, deliberately. So you know, Anders said, stepping back. This room isn't what it looks like. Not tonight. Marvin nodded once. Thank you. Anders squeezed his arm and disappeared back into the crowd. Nain approached Marvin slowly, her expression stiff, voice too bright. Marvin, can we talk? I think we should clarify a few things, but before she could finish, a donor interrupted her. Mrs. Ray, could you introduce us properly to your husband? The woman said with an eager smile. Nain swallowed her frustration and forced herself to smile. As she struggled, Ahmad avoided her, and whispers ate at her reputation like acid. And Marvin, silent as always, began piecing together the puzzle Anders had dropped in his lap. Ahmad, Harlan Schaefer, laundering, diplomatic ties, and his wife tangled somewhere in that orbit. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The storm had already begun forming in his mind. Chapter 5. The Confirmation of Betrayal. Marvin Ray sat alone in his study, the only light coming from the dual monitor screens glowing against the darkness. The house was silent, too silent. Nain had claimed she was staying late to help the embassy clean up after the gala, but Marvin didn't even bother pretending to believe her. He had lived too many lives, analyst, operative, strategist, sentinel. Lies had tones, patterns, rhythms. Hers were practically fluorescent at this point. He inhaled deeply and tapped a key. The surveillance logs opened. Not illegal surveillance. He'd never crossed that line with her. But he had installed security software on the house network, something they both theoretically shared access to. Nain simply never cared enough to ask. Marvin dragged a folder into place. GPC Embassy, internal logs, outbound messages deleted, calls access, timestamps. He clicked. The timeline unfolded like a confession. The affair confirmed. There she was. Nain's voice captured clearly from her office line 3 nights ago. Stop teasing me. Someone might hear you. Ahmed chuckle, low and self-satisfied. Let them. Half the embassy already assumes you're mine. Marvin's jaw tightened, but his face stayed blank. Emotional discipline was muscle memory. Another log. A video timestamp outside the embassy's service hallway. The angle wasn't perfect. Old security cameras rarely were, but it didn't need to be. Nain's silhouette pressed close to Ahmed's. His hand on her waist. Her lips brushing his neck. Marvin clicked again. More logs. More calls. More proof. Proof he already knew existed, but seeing it, hearing it, was different. It crystallized everything. Okay, Marvin whispered to himself, the word quiet and razor sharp. Now it's real. He didn't rage, didn't cry, didn't throw anything. He simply sat back, exhaled, and let the truth settle into place like pieces of a data model finally aligning. The unexpected detail. He returned to the logs, this time focusing on digital breadcrumbs that weren't related to the affair. Something had been itching at him since the gala. Ahmad and Schaefer, the way donors whispered afterward. The sudden distance Ahmad took from Nain, as if afraid proximity would stain him. Marvin opened a financial mapping program he hadn't touched since retiring. He typed in a few names. Ahmad Stein, Harlan, Schaefer, Schaefer Modern Arts Gallery, International Cultural Exchange, fund lines began forming between the entities. Faint at first, then thicker, then glowing red. Got you, Marvin murmured. Nain's affair was messy, humiliating, and personal. But this was criminal. The gallery, registered as a non-profit cultural asset, showed periodic donations from shell groups tied to West African mining operations. The same groups flagged 2 years ago in a DIA intelligence brief Marvin himself had written. Ahmad had consulting payments from a logistics firm connected to those same shell networks. It wasn't direct. It wasn't stupid. But to Marvin, it was obvious. A laundering trail. Not fully exposed. Not yet, but visible enough to a trained mind. And Ahmad wasn't just sleeping with his wife. He was bringing her into proximity with a criminal network. That's what scared him at the gala, Marvin realized. Not the affair. The exposure. He closed the file slowly. The marriage was collapsing. That was undeniable. But now there was something bigger. Something cleaner. Something he could handle without emotion. A mission. He reached for a notebook, a plain, black, unmarked pad, and opened to the first blank page. Marvin Ray, the man no one was supposed to notice, began writing. The plan begins. He outlined each point in neat, calm strokes. 1. Confirm Nain's financial involvement. He would check whether Ahmad used her accounts or name at any point. If so, even once, that would legally entangle her in Schaefer's network. 2. Gather digital evidence of the laundering patterns. He had enough to suspect, not enough to dismantle. Yet. 3. Create separate legal folders. Marital, criminal, and civil. He would not confront her emotionally. He would do this right. Clean, quiet, surgical. 4. Prepare divorce strategy. No shouting. No accusations. He would move with the same precision he once used to disarm bomb circuits. Calm hand, steady heart. 5. Remove himself from her reach financially and strategically. Tonight, a final line, written with absolute clarity. Neutralize Ahmad and Schaefer. Legally. Completely. He closed the notebook. The confirmation hurt, but it also gave him something far more valuable. Direction. He rose from the desk, turned off the monitors, and let the room fall back into darkness. His silhouette looked sharper somehow, like a man returning to form after years of dormancy. This wasn't just a betrayed husband sitting alone in a quiet house. This was a former sentinel preparing for war, and he would wage it without raising his voice once. He sat back down, opened the laptop again, and began pulling the first thread. Chapter 6, The Operation Begins. Marvin Ray moved like a man resurrecting an old ghost of himself, slowly, deliberately, without hesitation. His house was still, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound, but inside Marvin's mind the machinery was already turning with cold precision. He opened his encrypted contact list, a digital vault he hadn't touched since retirement. 3 names glowed on the screen. Rex Dalton, Treasury Department, Financial Crimes Division. Isabel Wu, DIA Counterintelligence Liaison. Locksmith, Independent Cyber Operative, formerly Black Budget. Marvin pressed a single key, calling the past back into play. The video call with Rex Dalton connected first. Rex's face filled the screen, gray-bearded, suspicious by nature, and always mid-coffee. Rex squinted. Marvin? Jesus Christ, Ray. Did someone die, or are you recruiting me into something illegal? Neither, Marvin replied calmly. I need background data on Harlan Schaefer's financial flows, cultural assets, offshore accounts, and any flag movements from West Africa. Rex set his mug down so hard it clinked. You don't ease into conversations anymore, do you? You know I never did. Rex grunted. You retired. Officially. I need an unofficial favor, Marvin said. Quiet. Fast. Rex stared at him for a beat, then sighed in a way that meant yes. Damn it. I'll help you, but I'm going to complain the whole time. Send me your parameters. And Marvin, if Schaefer's involved, be careful. His fixer, Ralpho, eats people for breakfast. Good, Marvin said. I want him hungry. Isabel Wu answered next, her tone sharp as a blade. Ray, what hole did you crawl out of? An old one, Marvin said. I need to revive one of my dormant identities. She rolled her eyes. Langley hates resurrecting dead covers. They don't need to know. She leaned closer. Marvin, what are you planning? A persona, he said. A bitter ex-operative looking to sell intel for money. No violence. No classified materials. Just enough bait to attract Schaefer's network. Isabel rubbed her forehead. Your wife kick you that hard? Marvin paused. This isn't about her. She snorted. With you, everything is always about someone. Despite her grumbling, she pulled up the files. Which identity? He didn't hesitate. Cade Mercer. Isabel's eyebrows shot up. That wasn't just a cover. That was a shadow. An unpredictable one. That's what I need. She looked at him long enough to understand there would be no talking him out of it. I'll reroute the identity through dead-end registries. Mercer will appear alive again in 12 hours. She sighed. Don't make me regret this. You never regret helping me, Marvin said. I regret it constantly. She disconnected, becoming someone else again. Marvin opened a locked drawer and removed the small, matte black case. Inside lay the tools of a life Nain never bothered to ask about. Synthetic passports, age cards, burner phones, retinal overlays, a photograph of a man who didn't exist except in missions that never officially happened. Cade Mercer, ex-operative. Unstable, skilled, disillusioned, perfect bait. Marvin changed his look, subtle but significant. Different posture, sharper edge in his movements. A slowed blink, a colder stare. He practiced a few lines in the mirror. Information's a currency. I'm broke. I don't want loyalty, just money. You need a problem solved? I solved it. The mirror reflected a version of him Nain had never seen and wouldn't have understood if she had. Laying a trap. The message went out at 3:42 a.m. through an encrypted broker network. Marvin knew Schaefer's operation monitored. Sender. K. Mercer encrypted packet. I have intel on a treasury investigation targeting offshore art transactions. Price negotiable. Interested parties contact for proof of value. He waited. 20 minutes later, his burner buzzed. Unknown number. We don't deal with ghosts. Marvin replied. You're confusing me with someone who needs to be believed. A pause. 2 minutes. 3. Then, unknown number. Meet tomorrow. 10 p.m. Warehouse 37. Alone. Marvin smirked. Ralpho had taken the bait. The first meeting, Warehouse 37, was a hollow, oil-stained structure at the port. Marvin arrived early, letting Mercer's persona settle into his bones. He stood in the shadows when headlights cut across the lot. A black SUV stopped. 3 men climbed out, 2 muscle, 1 brain. Ralpho, a short, wiry man with a perpetual smirk and a scar on his cheek. His eyes scanned Marvin like he was merchandise. You're Mercer? Ralpho asked. Marvin kept his expression flat. You called me. Ralpho circled him mockingly. Word is you used to be somebody. Lots of us used to be somebody, Marvin replied. What matters is what I can give you now. Ralpho tapped his phone. Show me your intel. Marvin held up a flash drive. Payment first. Ralpho chuckled. You're bold for a man with no employer. Who says I don't have one? The men bristled, hands drifting toward concealed weapons. Marvin didn't flinch. Finally, Ralpho nodded. Fine. Let's hear your offer. If it interests us, we'll bring you in. Marvin handed him a sanitized packet, fake enough to protect the government, real enough to hook criminals. Ralpho scanned it. His eyes widened just slightly in greed, not suspicion. He looked up. We may have work for you, Mercer. Marvin didn't smile, but inside, every piece of the puzzle clicked. Marvin had infiltrated the laundering scheme. Ralpho had taken the bait. The operation had officially begun. Chapter 7, Pressure builds on all sides. The next 48 hours unfolded like tightening wires around multiple throats. Marvin's, Schaefer's, and Nain's. The pressure in each corner of the web intensified, stretching the threads until they hummed. Marvin felt the vibration first. Schaefer makes his move. Schaefer's penthouse office was a monument to ego, floor-to-ceiling windows, gold accent shelves, abstract sculptures priced higher than small houses. Ralpho led Marvin in with a strained grin, trying to look confident. He failed. Schaefer stood with his hands folded behind him, tall, pale, and shark-still. "So," he said, eyeing Marvin like a butcher assessing a side of beef, "you're the former operative looking for new opportunities." "Kate Mercer," Marvin answered coolly. "Opportunities depend on the number you're willing to put on the table." Schaefer gestured lazily. "You people only ever want one thing." "And you people," Marvin countered, "only ever offer too little." Ralpho stiffened. "Watch your tone." Schaefer chuckled, amused. "Bold. I like bold." He slid an envelope across the glass desk. Marvin didn't touch it. Schaefer arched a brow. "It's not anthrax. I don't take gift from strangers." "Then take it from an employer." Marvin gave him a slow stare. "You haven't bought me yet." Schaefer exhaled sharply through his nose, a ghost of irritation. "Open it." Marvin finally lifted the envelope with 2 fingers, as if handling something mildly distasteful. Inside, 10 stacks of crisp hundreds. Ralpho smirked. "A starter. Consider it encouragement." "And the rest?" Marvin asked. Schaefer's gaze hardened. "You'll get a great deal more once you bring me something actually worth paying for." Marvin slid the envelope back across the table. "I don't work on promises." Ralpho's jaw clenched. "You're pushing it." Schaefer raised a hand to silence him, eyes narrowing at Marvin. "You're either the most arrogant ex-operative I've met, or the most desperate." "Maybe both," Marvin said flatly. A slow grin spread across Schaefer's face. "Good. Desperate men get things done." They thought they were playing him. Marvin walked out with nothing, on purpose. Men like Schaefer panicked when money didn't move someone. They pushed harder, made mistakes. Pressure required patience. The FBI sniffs the edges. By afternoon, Marvin's burner vibrated with a coded text from Rex Dalton. "Feds circling Schaefer. They smelled something. Keep your head down." An hour later, an FYI, someone reported an unknown asset entering Schaefer's orbit. "Could be you. Watch your 6." Marvin almost smiled. It meant the trap was working faster than expected. He responded only, "Proceed as discussed." No deviations. Marvin pocketed the phone and kept walking. If the FBI got too close too quickly, Schaefer might bolt, and the entire laundering scheme might vanish into the wind. He needed them curious, not alarmed. Pressure. Everywhere. Meanwhile, Nane's world begins to crumble. At the same time, across the city, Nane sat in her office, staring at an email chain full of cancellations. Donor luncheon, postponed board review, rescheduled sponsor Q&A, withdrawn her assistant. Lila tiptoed in. Another donor asked if your husband will be attending future events. Nane's face hardened. "Why?" "They're saying he deceived everyone. Pretending to be your bodyguard last night made things look suspicious." "It wasn't deceit," Nane snapped too loud. "He agreed to it." Lila swallowed, nodded, and escaped the room. Nane dropped her head into her hands. Her entire professional orbit was wobbling, colleagues whispering, donors hesitating, board members asking subtle questions she couldn't gracefully answer. She checked her phone. Still nothing from Ahmad. She tried again. "Hey, call me. We need to talk." Message delivered. Not read. Again. "I'm worried. Please." Nothing. A cold dread pooled in her stomach. Phoebe shows her the truth. By evening, there was a knock at Nane's door. Phoebe walked in, always blunt, always too perceptive. "You look like you aged 10 years overnight," Phoebe said, setting her purse down. "Not in the mood," Nane muttered. "Good," Phoebe said, "because I'm not here to coddle you." Nane frowned. "What does that mean?" Phoebe inhaled, then pulled out her phone. "I didn't want to show you this, but you deserve to know." She tapped play. Ahmed's voice filled the office, clear, dismissive, irritated. "Nane? She's a useful idiot. Emotional leverage, that's all. And she thinks I actually care? Please." Nane's breath left her body as though punched. Her hand flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered. "No, he wouldn't. It was recorded at the bar last week," Phoebe said. "He didn't know I was at the next table. He didn't mean..." He was angry, drunk. Phoebe tightened her jaw. Nain, you're spiraling, and he's letting you. Tears blurred Nain's vision. Shame, panic, humiliation, blending into something sharp and suffocating. Why would he say that? She choked. Because he's a snake, Phoebe said bluntly. And because he's using you. Nain crumbled into her chair, trembling. For the first time, she realized she wasn't slipping. She was falling. And Marvin? Across the city, Marvin stepped into the night air, aware of the storms gathering around every player on the board. Schaefer was pushing. The FBI was closing in. And somewhere, in a different kind of darkness, Nain's perfectly curated life was beginning to cave in on itself. Chapter 8, Divorce Papers. The rain had not stopped for hours, a steady gray sheet tapping against the apartment windows like a drumbeat of inevitability. Marvin stood inside the doorway, a man carved from stillness, a sealed envelope in his hand. The same hand that once defused bombs, handled military-grade encryption, and carried his wife across the threshold on their wedding night. Now it held divorce papers. He waited until he heard the elevator doors outside the hallway slide open. Footsteps. Light, hurried, stressed. Nain's. She pushed the door open, shaking off her umbrella, muttering under her breath as she dropped her bag. But she froze when she finally saw him standing there, quiet, composed, unreadable. Marvin, you're home early. Her voice trembled, though she fought to hide it. We should talk. Things have been. He extended the envelope. Her eyes locked onto it. Her breath hitched. No, she whispered, not touching it. Marvin, no. What is that? You know what it is, he said softly. She shook her head as if shaking could rewind reality. Marvin, wait. We're having a bad week. I've been under pressure. You've been distant. We can work. Nain, he interrupted gently. Open it. Her hands finally lifted, trembling so violently she fumbled the envelope before tearing it open. Pages spilled out. The bold heading at the top was unmistakable. Petition for divorce. Her face drained of color like milk poured into ink. WHY? She stared at the page as if it were written in a language she didn't understand. You're divorcing me? Just like that? Without even trying to fix us? Without talking to me first? We stopped fixing anything a long time ago, Marvin said. You just didn't notice. Tears sprang into her eyes. Marvin, please. If this is about the gala, I didn't mean to embarrass you. I wasn't thinking. I can explain. This isn't about the gala. Silence expanded between them like a chasm. He watched her swallow hard, her throat tightening. Is it because of the donors? My work problems? I can handle it, Marvin. I just need time. Please don't do this now. He set his jaw, calm but unyielding. It's because you had an affair with Ahmad. The words sliced through the room. Nain's knees buckled, and she grabbed the edge of the counter. Marvin, her voice was barely audible. Just listen. I made a mistake. It was stupid. It was emotional, not emotional, he repeated, and physical. She flinched as if he had slapped her. Marvin, please. She stepped toward him, wiping her eyes. You don't understand. It wasn't serious. I was confused. Ahmad, he said things. He made you feel important, Marvin said, finishing the sentence without emotion. That was the first moment she broke, really broke, her face collapsing into raw panic. I'm going to lose everything, she whispered. My job, my credibility, my life. Marvin, please don't do this. Don't destroy me. He met her eyes, steady and calm. I'm not here to destroy you, Nain. She blinked rapidly, confused, desperate. Then why? Why divorce me? Why now? Why like this? Because I'm done, he said simply. And because this affair isn't the only problem coming your way. Her breath stilled. What do you mean? He walked past her into the living room and set a folder on the coffee table. You're on the FBI's radar. Her hand flew to her mouth. No. I didn't do anything criminal. I didn't know what Ahmad was doing, I swear. I believe you, Marvin said. But they won't take your word for it. They'll ask questions. Hard ones. Loud ones. Her legs shook. Marvin, he didn't tell me anything. You have to help me. He looked at her, really looked at her, the fear in her eyes, the realization that she was no longer in control of anything. "I am helping you," Marvin said. "That's why I came myself, instead of letting a process server show up at your office." "What do I do?" she whispered, terrified. "Marvin, what am I supposed to do?" "You tell the FBI everything," he answered. "The truth. All of it." Her face twisted. "They'll destroy me." "No," he said softly. "Lying will destroy you. Cooperating might save you." She broke into quiet sobs, her hand clutching the divorce papers like they were burning her fingers. "I'm scared," she whispered. "For the first time in my life, I'm legitimately scared." Marvin nodded once. "That's because for the first time," he said gently, "you understand how much danger you put yourself in." She looked up at him like a drowning woman reaching for the surface. "Marvin, will you at least tell them I didn't know? That I wasn't part of it? Please." His expression softened, but not enough to undo anything. "I'll tell the truth," he said. "Nothing more. Nothing less." Her tears fell harder. "And the rest?" she whispered. "The rest," he said quietly, turning toward the door, "is up to you." He walked out, leaving her standing alone in the dim apartment, clutching the papers to her chest as if holding them tight could stop her entire world from collapsing. Chapter 9. The Treasury Sting. Marvin sat in the corner of a dimly lit cafe, the kind of place where the scent of stale espresso mingled with whispered deals. He sipped black coffee, observing the reflection in the dark window, one eye always scanning, measuring. Across the table, an innocuous man in a gray coat fiddled with a tablet. Ralpho had no idea Marvin wasn't just Mercer tonight. He didn't see the sentinel behind the mask. Marvin tapped the tablet casually, sending another encrypted packet. Schaefer's network would bite. It always did. False intel, tantalizing, credible, tailored. Each thread suggested leaks in the Treasury's audits, minor vulnerabilities in banking conduits, offshore shells supposedly unmonitored, perfectly designed to make a criminal paranoid and sloppy. Ralpho appeared a few minutes later, leaning casually against the cafe wall. "Mercer," he said, voice flat but edged. "You're slipping into dangerous territory. You know the feds are sniffing around. Don't think I don't know what you're doing." Marvin didn't flinch. He met Ralpho's eyes evenly. "I know exactly what I'm doing. And you? You're playing a dangerous game pretending you can intimidate someone who's already dead to fear." Ralpho smirked, but there was tension in the way he flexed his fingers, the twitch at the corner of his jaw. "Be careful. You make a mistake, you could find yourself facing real charges, fraud, obstruction, conspiracy. And I won't be shy about fabricating evidence to make sure it sticks." "Try it," Marvin said simply. "You'll need more than bluster to trap me." Ralpho's expression darkened. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Do you understand who you're dealing with? Schaefer isn't a man you can walk away from. He has power, influence, people in the right seats who will see you punished." "Understand perfectly," Marvin said, still calm, still measured. He allowed a faint smile, the kind that unnerves confident men. "I also understand how to keep one step ahead." Ralpho straightened and walked off, muttering under his breath. Marvin stayed seated, letting the threat linger in the air, knowing the tension would gnaw at Ralpho's confidence and funnel it back to Schaefer. Across the city, Schaefer paced in his penthouse, phone pressed to his ear. "Move the assets. Liquidate everything overseas. I want shell accounts emptied and paintings transferred yesterday. No traces. And Mercer, check Mercer. He's asking too many questions." His assistant nodded nervously. "Yes, sir. But no buts." Schaefer barked. "If Mercer gets close to the real patterns, it's over. Get every ledger off-site, every account, every connection. Now." The paranoia thickened the air. Schaefer's usual calm arrogance had fractured. His normally confident voice rattled with fear. Marvin had predicted this. The false leaks had done their work, like baited hooks drawing a predator into a trap. Back in the cafe, Marvin's burner phone vibrated. A secure line from Rex Dalton. "Rex, we're ready. Treasury and FBI are prepped for coordinated action. Schaefer's behavior is already triggering internal alerts." Marvin replied, terse. "Marvin, wait for the signal. Let him flail a little more. The mistakes are more valuable than arrests." He disconnected and leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. Every false intel packet he fed them had a purpose. To make Schaefer anxious, to make Ralpho push too far, to destabilize the network from within. By the time the agencies moved in, the criminals would be tangled in their own errors. Ralpho's next attempt came swiftly. He cornered Marvin in a shadowed parking garage. "You think this is a game?" he hissed, slamming a hand against the hood of Marvin's borrowed rental. "I can make you disappear. I can have the feds convinced you're the one laundering the money." Marvin remained still, hands in his pockets. "Go ahead. Invent your fantasies. Your lies won't survive a single audit. And by the time they do, I'll be long gone, and you'll have handed the government everything you hoped to hide." Ralpho's chest heaved, rage and desperation mingling in a dangerous cocktail. He cursed under his breath, backing away slowly. Marvin watched him leave, each step echoing like a drumbeat in the garage. By evening, Marvin returned to his safe house, reviewing the network map again. Schaefer's assets were already in motion. Offshore accounts, shell companies, moving, hiding. And yet, every movement left breadcrumbs, a trail Marvin's old contacts could follow. Every action was predictable once you understood fear. He allowed himself a single sip of water and thought of the coming day. The Treasury teams, the FBI agents, the moment the trap would finally close. He imagined Schaefer frantic, Ralpho panicked, and a network collapsing silently but completely. Marvin's mind was steady, his face calm. He was not anxious. He had been here before, in worse places, against deadlier enemies. This was simply a matter of patience, precision, and timing. Everything was in place. The sting was set. The criminals were panicking exactly as predicted, and Marvin, as Mercer, remained 2 steps ahead of everyone in the room. Chapter 10, Cornered. The evening air was thick with mist, the kind that made streetlights halo like ghostly sentinels. Ahmad Stein paced the embassy parking lot, phone pressed to his ear, his voice tight and urgent. "Nain," he barked, "you have to meet me. Now, at Rock Creek Park. It's important." Ahmad, Nain's voice trembled. She pressed a hand to the wall of her office building, trying to steady herself. "I don't think that a good, don't think," he snapped. "Just come. I need you there. Alone. It's the only way I can fix this." Her stomach dropped. "Fix this? Ahmad, you don't get to fix anything. You've dragged me into—" "Listen to me," he interrupted, nearly yelling. I can't control this anymore. The walls are closing in. You have to help me. Please. Please." Nain's breath caught. She had always known, deep down, that Ahmed's arrogance would one day falter, that the charming, polished diplomat could crack. But hearing the panic in his voice made her blood run cold. She whispered, hesitating. I'll come. But I'm scared, Ahmad. This isn't safe. Trust me," he said, voice low, desperate. "It'll be fine. Just meet me. Please." Nain hung up, shaking. Her reflection in the glass door stared back at her, pale and tense. Her hands were trembling. Every instinct screamed to stay put, to call the authorities, to run. Yet a faint part of her still carried the residue of loyalty, of fear, of the hope that she could salvage something from the wreckage. She gathered her coat, sliding into it as if putting on armor, and slipped her phone into her pocket. Each step toward her car felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. She checked the rearview mirror. Alone, she started the engine. Every mile to Rock Creek Park made her heart thump louder, every street lamp a judgmental eye. Meanwhile, miles away, Marvin Ray monitored the live feed from a secure channel. Cameras had been installed in key locations along the park trail, trees, lampposts, even a utility box. The feeds flickered, revealing shadows that moved like predators, the mist weaving between them. He watched Nain's car slow as she entered the park, headlights barely cutting through the fog. Her hand gripped the steering wheel white-knuckled. She swallowed hard and exhaled, more than once. Marvin's thumb hovered over the control pad, ready to zoom the camera, to pan, to catch every angle. Every step she took into the park was pre-planned, monitored, and safe, but he didn't relax. Surveillance was not just observation. It was strategy. He could see Ahmad now, pacing near the trail's intersection, phone pressed against his ear, muttering under his breath, scanning the surroundings as if the mist itself were conspiratorial. Ahmad's voice rose, almost hysterical. "Nain, where are you? You need to come closer. Just to the old fountain. Hurry." Nain drove slowly, heart racing. "The fountain," she muttered to herself, repeating his words as if it were a lifeline. Her legs shook as she parked near the gravel path leading to the spot he had specified. Ahmad's eyes darted left and right. His diplomatic confidence was gone. In its place, raw, unrestrained panic. He knew the walls were closing in, the Treasury sting, the looming FBI inquiry, the media whispers he had tried to suppress. No embassy immunity could stop what was coming. Marvin's eyes tracked every movement, every shadow. He noted Ahmad's gait, the way he clutched his phone, the subtle pacing pattern betraying tension and indecision. He could see Nain now stepping out of her car, coat wrapped tightly around her, shoulders hunched. "Keep calm," Marvin whispered into his headset, a ritual more than a command. "Every move matters. Observe, don't engage." Ahmad finally noticed her. Relief and desperation washed across his features in equal measure. "Nain," he called again, waving. "Come closer, please." Nain's lips pressed together. She took tentative steps along the gravel, mist curling around her ankles. Each step carried both fear and the faint, foolish hope that Ahmad's charm would protect her somehow. Marvin zoomed in the camera, capturing every detail. Ahmad's frantic movements, the way he shifted his weight, his eyes scanning exits and shadows. His entire demeanor screamed unhinged, yet calculating. He knew the rules had changed. He had lost control. Nain's breath fogged in the chilly evening air. She stopped a few meters away from him, heart hammering, mind racing. "Ahmad, I shouldn't even be here." He grabbed her hands abruptly, gripping tightly. "No, you have to hear me. I can't do this alone." Marvin adjusted the feed, observing silently, noting the distance, the positioning, the potential exits. He didn't interfere yet. That was for the moment when precision mattered. And there they were. Ahmad desperate, exposed, cornered by circumstance. Nain terrified, caught in the middle of a storm she didn't fully understand. The night was heavy with mist and tension. The park eerily quiet except for their hurried breaths and distant city sounds. Marvin's calm, steady presence was invisible, yet he saw everything. He knew every next step before it happened. The trap was ready. Ahmad was running out of options. And Nain, she was about to learn just how far the shadows had stretched around them. Chapter 11, The Arrest. The mist hung low over Rock Creek Park, draping everything in a gray veil. Ahmad Stein's eyes darted nervously, his hands trembling ever so slightly as he tried to gauge the shadows. His diplomatic composure had vanished hours ago, replaced by raw panic. Nain stood frozen a few feet away, the gravel crunching softly beneath her shoes, her hands instinctively clutching the strap of her coat. "Nain," Ahmad hissed, leaning closer, "you have to help me. We can tell them it was just, a misunderstanding. I need you to back me up. I won't lie for you," she said, voice shaking, yet steady. "I'm not covering your mess. I won't be part of this." Ahmad's jaw tightened, nostrils flaring. His grip on her arm tightened briefly, then released. "You don't understand. If you don't say what I tell you, it's over. Everything falls apart." Nain stepped back, shaking her head. "I understand perfectly. I'm done playing your game." He cursed under his breath, muttering in a mix of fear and fury. The phone in his coat pocket vibrated continuously, Treasury alerts, internal embassy warnings. The walls were closing in, and he could feel it. The sting, the surveillance, the inevitable collapse of everything he thought untouchable. He looked around quickly, scanning the misty tree-line. Then, with a flash of desperation, he reached for the gun hidden under his coat. "Ahmad, don't," Nain whispered, her eyes widening. She stumbled backward, heart racing. Before he could fully draw, a shadow moved behind him. Silent, precise. A hand closed over the gun wrist, twisting it, disarming him in a fraction of a second. Ahmed's eyes went wide in disbelief. You, he stammered, turning, only to see Marvin Ray standing there, calm, unwavering. His presence was absolute, like a predator materialized from thin air. "Ow, drop it," Marvin said softly, voice level but lethal. "Now!" Ahmad froze, realizing the seconds of hesitation were already too late. Federal agents, masked and swift, emerged from the shadows surrounding the clearing. Flashlights pierced the mist, illuminating every corner. Ahmed's diplomatic immunity badge did nothing to shield him here. The agents had a warrant, and his every movement was already documented. "Hands where I can see them," one agent commanded. Ahmed's face drained of color. He raised his hands slowly, every ounce of bravado drained, replaced by the hollow panic of a man caught completely off guard. Marvin stepped forward, watching his every move, making sure Nain stayed back, safe. "You thought you could control everything," Marvin said quietly, almost to himself. "You were wrong." Two agents approached, cuffing Ahmed's wrists efficiently, reading him his rights. The panic had turned into resignation. There was no escape. He was expelled under diplomatic immunity, yes, but his career, reputation, and freedom for the foreseeable future were gone. Nain let out a long, trembling breath. Her knees felt weak, and she sank onto a nearby bench, finally allowing herself to collapse into the relief that she was still alive and unharmed. Marvin crouched beside her, his hand briefly brushing hers, not in intimacy, but in reassurance. She nodded, wordlessly conveying thanks and fear mixed together. "Is it over?" she asked, voice hoarse. "For him," Marvin said, rising, his eyes scanning the tree lean and the mist. "Yes. For the operation, not yet." Because somewhere across town, the other pieces of the web were also falling. By that same night, Schaefer's sprawling estate was crawling with federal agents. Schaefer himself sat in a leather chair, cuffed but defiant, glancing around the room at his scattered aides and lawyers. The panic he had once projected outward now mirrored Ahmed's earlier desperation. "You think this stops with me?" Schaefer sneered, voice shaking slightly. "It's bigger than you, bigger than anyone you think you can control." An agent leaned in. "Start talking, Schaefer. Names, channels, everything. You cooperate, it works better for you." He paused, eyes darting from the walls to the agent. Then, slowly, a smirk spread across his face. Not a confident one, more the kind that belongs to a man cornered and willing to burn bridges to save himself. "All right," he said, voice low, deliberate. "You want names? I can give you names." And just like that, the first dominoes began to fall. Across the city, the criminal network started unraveling in real time. Offshore accounts frozen, shell companies flagged, transactions traced, all from a single, calculated sting. Meanwhile, back in Rock Creek Park, Nain finally exhaled fully, realizing she had survived not just Ahmed's threats, but the full weight of the conspiracy surrounding him. Marvin remained by her side, a silent sentinel, a man who had quietly dismantled the chaos without a single unnecessary word. The night was cold, misted, and strangely peaceful now. Ahmad was arrested, cornered, and expelled. Schaefer was captured and already beginning to talk, leaking names that would detonate the network and implicate countless others. The storm had hit, and for the first time, the pieces were finally moving in Marvin's favor. Chapter 12, The Aftermath. The city seemed quieter now, as though the storm that had threatened to swallow everything had passed, leaving a brittle, fragile calm in its wake. Marvin Ray walked into his office, a modest space he had reclaimed after the chaos, stripped of unnecessary trappings, almost clinical in its simplicity. Files, secure devices, and a single coffee mug sat neatly on the desk. He exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that comes after a long battle finally settles into the body. Nain arrived mid-morning, escorted by an investigator. Her posture was stiff but cooperative. The fire of arrogance that had once colored her every movement was gone. She carried a small box, the tangible remnants of her life tied to Ahmad. Gifts, letters, discreet tokens she had once considered precious. Now they were just objects to be relinquished. "Marvin," she said softly, avoiding eye contact. Her voice lacked its usual sharpness. I just want you to know I'm doing what's necessary. I'm cooperating." He nodded, silent, letting her words settle. There was no sarcasm, no judgment, just the steady calm of a man who had seen far worse and survived. "You're doing the right thing," Marvin said finally. "For yourself, for the investigation, and for your own conscience." Nain placed the box on the table carefully. "Everything Ahmad gave me. I'm returning it. I've notified the authorities. I resigned from the Foundation. Publicly. I accepted responsibility. No excuses." Marvin watched her. The posture, the humility, it was real. The facade was gone. What remained was human, a woman facing consequences she had once refused to consider. "I'm sorry, Marvin," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "For everything. My arrogance, my deceit, She paused, swallowing. "My betrayal. I was selfish. I didn't see what I had until I lost it. And I see now." He did not respond immediately. He let the apology hang in the air, heavy but sincere. Finally, he spoke, voice even but warm. "I accept it," he said. "Not to condone the past, but to acknowledge that it's over. There's nothing left for blame to accomplish now." Nain nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. I never wanted to hurt you, Marvin. But I did. And I can't take that back." "You can take responsibility," he said. "And that's the first step toward rebuilding your life. That's enough." They stood in silence for a moment, each measuring the other, the distance between them filled with history, pain, and the quiet relief of closure. Marvin's eyes softened, not for her, not in forgiveness exactly, but in recognition that they had survived and that the chapter could finally end without flames. "Shall we?" he asked, motioning toward the formal paperwork on the desk. The divorce documents lay ready, everything finalized, fair, equitable. No hidden clauses, no bitter clauses of spite. Only a clean, measured ending. Nain took a deep breath and approached the desk. Her hand shook slightly as she signed, each stroke deliberate, a pen marking the final severance of their marriage. Marvin signed in parallel, precise, calm. Each signature a quiet acknowledgement that they had both survived, and that neither would be left with the bitterness that often follows betrayal. When the paperwork was complete, they looked at each other one last time. Nain's eyes were filled with genuine remorse, and Marvin's with resolute clarity. I hope you find peace," she said finally. "Not with me, but in your life. You deserve it." Marvin's lips curved faintly in a nod. "Thank you. And I hope you do too. You've got a chance to start over, without lies, without pretense. Don't waste it." She exhaled slowly, a mixture of grief and release. "I won't forget, but I will try. I'll try to do better." "Good," he said. "That's all anyone can ask." They turned away from the desk simultaneously, a silent choreography of two lives diverging. Marvin's steps were measured, deliberate, carrying the calm of a man who had faced darkness and emerged unbroken. Nain's were tentative at first, then gradually steadier, as if each step carried her further from the mistakes of the past and closer to a chance at genuine self-repair. Marvin opened the door for her. She paused, glancing back with one final, almost imperceptible nod. A wordless acknowledgement passed between them. No lingering bitterness, only the weight of lessons learned and the necessity of moving forward. Outside, the winter sunlight caught the edges of the city in sharp relief. Nain walked away, small box in hand, disappearing into the streets with the heavy responsibility of her choices, but also a newfound clarity. Marvin closed the door behind her, leaned against it for a moment, then stepped back into his office, the quiet calm finally settling around him like a mantle. They had survived the storm. The fallout had been brutal, but the aftermath was clean, measured, and fair. There were apologies made, responsibilities accepted, and a marriage ended not with vengeance, but with dignity. Chapter 13, The Fourth Intelligence Star. Marvin Ray sat alone in his study, the faint hum of the city beyond the windows barely audible over the ticking of a vintage clock. He poured himself a glass of water, his movements deliberate, measured. Outside, the sun was low, casting a warm orange glow over the skyline. It was a quiet day, almost deceptively normal after the months of chaos, betrayal, and calculated precision that had consumed his life. The doorbell rang, crisp and unexpected. He set the glass down and walked over, opening the door to find two men in sharply pressed DIA suits, their expressions formal, almost ceremonious. They carried a leather-bound folder and a small, elegant box. Mr. Ray, the taller of the two, said, his tone precise, carrying the weight of official business. "We apologize for the sudden visit. We have a matter of recognition to present to you." Marvin arched an eyebrow, but remained silent. His body was a map of discipline, but curiosity flickered in his eyes. The second man stepped forward, placing the box carefully on the table inside Marvin's study. "This," he said, gesturing to the box, "is the fourth intelligence star. For your role in dismantling the Schaefer-Stein operation. Your work saved countless lives, financial systems, and preserved national security at a critical juncture." Marvin glanced down at the star, simple yet imposing in its design, and his eyes lingered on the engraving. The weight of its significance pressed in quietly, a stark contrast to the simplicity of his current life. You're awarding this to me?" he asked quietly, the words almost lost in the room's stillness. "Yes, sir," the taller man confirmed. "The DI acknowledges that your actions went above and beyond, not only in field operations but in strategy, planning, and execution. The fourth intelligence star is a rare honor, and it is fully deserved." Marvin nodded slowly, weighing the gesture. Recognition had never been his goal. Accomplishment had always been quiet, measured, a line drawn in the shadows. Yet this acknowledgement carried with it something more. The weight of a past life, one that had defined him, controlled him, and now, unexpectedly, was offering him a choice. The taller man cleared his throat. "Additionally, sir, the DI would like to formally offer you a position back in the field. Your experience, your strategic mind, your instincts, unparalleled. We believe you could serve in a capacity few others could match." Marvin's gaze drifted to the window. He imagined the field once again. Clandestine meetings in foreign cities, operations under the cover of darkness, the constant tension of knowing every move could be the last. He remembered the adrenaline, the danger, the unending pressure, but also the isolation, the secrets he could never share, the life he had missed at home, and the betrayal that had shattered what little stability he had. He turned slowly back to the men. "I appreciate the recognition. Truly," he said evenly, "but I'm going to have to decline the offer to return to active operations." The taller agent blinked, momentarily surprised. "Sir, are you certain?" "Your skills, I'm certain," Marvin interrupted gently but firmly. "I've spent decades in shadows. I've done my duty. I've followed orders. But I'm not looking for more shadows, more secrets, more walls closing in on every aspect of my life. What I want now is peace, freedom, purpose in the light, not the dark." The agents exchanged glances, understanding dawning in their eyes. One stepped forward, a hint of respect softening the formal demeanor. "Your service has always been exceptional. Choosing your own path is admirable." Marvin nodded once, a quiet acknowledgement of the weight behind their words. "I'll continue to serve in ways that matter, but on my own terms. Consulting, ethical security work, helping communities, ensuring that intelligence serves the public good, not just the shadows." The men placed the box carefully back in Marvin's hands. "Very well, sir. The DI respects your decision. And know that your contributions are permanently recorded, valued, and remembered. The fourth intelligence star is yours, not just as an award, but as a symbol of integrity, skill, and discretion." Marvin looked at the star again, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a life finally reconciled. Not with glory, not with fame, but with purpose. He placed it gently on his desk, a reminder that the past had been conquered and the future, for the first time, belonged to him entirely. He rose from the chair, walking over to the window, watching the city bathe in the evening sun. The world outside was alive, ordinary, and full of possibilities he had never allowed himself to consider. Peace, freedom, purpose. He took a deep breath, letting the warm light fill him, the weight of the shadows lifting at last. Chapter 14. A New Life Begins. The morning sun broke over Anacostia in pale gold streaks, illuminating the narrow streets and quiet townhouses. Marvin Ray pulled up to the small women's shelter in his black SUV, the engine's hum fading into the soft sounds of children playing in a nearby park. The shelter, modest but well-kept, had always operated on a shoestring budget, its staff overworked, its residents vulnerable. Today, Marvin was here for a different purpose. He stepped out, feeling the crisp air brush against his face, a welcome change from the shadows he'd inhabited for decades. In his hands, he carried blueprints, security plans, and equipment lists. He had spent weeks preparing upgrades, entry systems, cameras, motion sensors, and a secure communications network. No detail was too small. His mission was protection, not secrecy. Wilma, the shelter's coordinator, emerged from the doorway as Marvin approached. Her hair was tied back, her expression alert but warm, eyes scanning him as if trying to gauge the measure of the man before her. "Mr. Ray?" she asked, voice polite but not reverent. "You must be here for the consultation. I wasn't expecting someone like you." Marvin offered a faint smile. "I like to work quietly. I'll start by assessing the current systems and identifying vulnerabilities." Wilma studied him for a long moment. "Quiet, you say? Well, that might be exactly what we need. I'm Wilma." She extended a hand. "We've had security audits before, but none quite like what you're bringing. I hope you know our resources are limited." "I do," Marvin replied, shaking her hand firmly. "We'll focus on efficiency, not expense. Protection doesn't have to be flashy. It has to be smart, layered, and predictable." She nodded, eyes flicking to the front entrance. "Follow me. The staff will appreciate guidance, and maybe some extra patience." Marvin moved through the shelter methodically, noting doors that didn't lock properly, windows with weak latches, and areas with poor visibility. Wilma walked beside him, explaining routines, resident schedules, and staffing limitations. She spoke with the sort of calm, organized authority that reminded Marvin how much he had missed human competence without ego or deception. "Some nights we have volunteers watching the front," Wilma said, leading him to the common room. "Others, we rely on neighborhood patrols. It's not ideal, but it's what we can manage." "Not ideal," Marvin echoed, kneeling to inspect a door. "We could do better. Cameras here, sensors here, and an alert system linked to local authorities. The volunteers stay in the loop, but they're no longer the first line of defense. They're the last line, safe, informed, and coordinated." Wilma watched him, impressed by the precision in his voice, the calm authority he carried without arrogance. "You make it sound simple," she said, "but I can tell it isn't. You've thought this through thoroughly." "It's my habit," Marvin said softly. "I'm used to planning for every outcome, no matter how small. I suppose it follows me everywhere." As they continued their walk through, the shelter staff began to gather, curious and slightly wary of the tall, quiet man. Marvin spoke to them patiently, answering questions without condescension, demonstrating equipment without theatrics. For the first time in years, he felt the quiet satisfaction of his skills being used for pure good, helping others, not manipulating, not hiding secrets, not running endless operations in shadows. Wilma stayed close, occasionally asking detailed questions about protocols, alert times, and redundancy systems. Marvin explained each decision, each placement, each safety measure, using language anyone could understand. There was no code words, no classified references, only clarity, reason, and care. "Thank you," Wilma said finally, standing beside him in the newly mapped surveillance hub. "Most people with your expertise wouldn't take the time to explain anything. They just set it up and leave. You treat us with respect. I appreciate that more than I can say." Marvin's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. "Respect is earned," he replied, and anyone protecting vulnerable people deserves it automatically. They exchanged a quiet nod, an unspoken acknowledgement of trust and shared purpose. Marvin realized, almost with surprise, how refreshing it felt to be treated not as a resource, a tool, or a relic of someone else's secrets, but as a person, valued for both skill and integrity. As the day stretched on, cameras installed, alarms tested, and protocols rehearsed, Marvin allowed himself a rare sense of contentment. Outside, the sunlight moved through the windows, casting warm streaks across the walls, across desks, across his hands as he worked. For the first time in decades, he was not hiding. He was not executing a covert mission. He was simply making a difference, tangible and immediate. And in the corner of the room, Wilma watched, thoughtful, respectful, and steady, a presence that reminded him life could have clarity, dignity, and connection. Marvin realized that for the first time in years, he wasn't defined by shadows. He was defined by what he chose to protect, who he chose to help, and the world he wanted to see safer. Chapter 15, Stepping into the Light. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Marvin Ray's new office, painting warm stripes across the polished floor. It was a modest space, nothing like the sterile, high-security environments he had spent decades inhabiting, yet it felt like freedom. The hum of the city outside, distant traffic, the occasional bird in a nearby park, it all blended into a rhythm that was calming, ordinary, and yet profound. Marvin leaned back in his chair, reviewing a proposal for a new client. A mid-sized tech firm looking to upgrade both physical and cybersecurity. Unlike the days of secret missions and covert manipulations, this was tangible work, measurable and above board. He smiled faintly at the simplicity of it. Here, his expertise was respected, consulted, and applied without deception or the weight of endless secrecy. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Wilma entered, carrying a stack of papers and a faint, warm smile. "Morning, Marvin. How about the final specs for the shelter's network upgrades? We can schedule the installation next week." Marvin stood to take the papers. "Perfect. You've done a lot here already, Wilma. I'll make sure the volunteers understand the protocols and emergency procedures." She hesitated, looking at him thoughtfully. "You know, you've changed the way I see security entirely. It's not just equipment or cameras. It's strategy, awareness, and integrity. People trust you, Marvin." He allowed himself a brief smile, one that didn't hide behind stoicism. Trust is earned over time, and sometimes it's restored slowly. Her gaze lingered on him for a moment, almost like she wanted to say more, but instead she nodded. "Well, the clients will get that same approach. You're rare, someone who actually cares." He watched her leave, and a quiet satisfaction settled over him. For the first time in years, his skills, his judgment, and his presence were appreciated, not feared, not underestimated. Later that week, Marvin met with a new client, a nonprofit that focused on youth education. The CEO greeted him with enthusiasm, shaking his hand firmly. "Mr. Ray, we've heard exceptional things about your work. It's rare to meet someone who balances expertise with ethics so well." Marvin nodded, accustomed to recognition, yet unaccustomed to this kind of openness. "I aim to make solutions practical and sustainable. Safety isn't just about technology, it's about culture, awareness, and consistency." The CEO leaned forward, impressed. "Exactly. That's why we want you. Our previous security consultant was, well, he treated us like a checklist. You treat people like human beings." Marvin gave a small, modest smile. In that moment, he felt visible again, not the invisible, underestimated husband Nain had treated him as, nor the shadow operative moving through classified corridors, but fully present, fully capable, fully seen. Outside of work, Marvin's life began to expand. He met Wilma for coffee after work one evening, discussing upgrades, volunteers, and procedural nuances. Conversation flowed easily. Laughter emerged, unforced, familiar. She didn't coddle him, didn't see him as a savior or a relic of the past. She saw him as a partner in ideas, a trusted professional, and perhaps, quietly, something more. "Marvin," she said, stirring her coffee, "you really have a knack for seeing potential where others see problems. I think that's why people respect you so much." He shrugged lightly, though a faint blush colored his cheeks. "I just pay attention. That's all. People notice when someone notices them in return." She smiled, eyes bright, and Marvin felt a warmth he hadn't realized he'd missed, a human connection that didn't hinge on fear, duty, or obligation, but on respect and shared purpose. Meanwhile, Nane's own life began to stabilize, quieter, humbler. She returned to her nonprofit work, this time stripped of pretense, aware of her responsibilities, and determined to rebuild her reputation and sense of self honestly. Marvin heard reports of her modest achievements, her cooperative work with authorities, and her efforts to mentor younger staff. He acknowledged it with a calm sense of closure. The woman he had once loved, then lost to betrayal, was finding herself again. One evening, Marvin sat on the balcony of his apartment, looking out at the city skyline. The streets below were alive but unobtrusive. He could hear laughter from children in nearby parks, the distant rumble of traffic, the faint hum of ordinary life moving forward. For the first time, Marvin didn't feel invisible. He felt anchored, important, not to the world at large, but to himself. Years of shadows, betrayal, and secrecy had forged him, shaped him, but now he was stepping into the light on his own terms. No covert missions, no hidden agendas, no unspoken contempt or betrayal. Just purpose, clarity, and the quiet satisfaction of being genuinely seen. He took a slow breath, letting it fill him completely. His mind wandered briefly to the future. Projects, volunteering, perhaps even a personal connection that might grow, rooted in honesty and mutual respect. The horizon was wide open. Marvin Ray, once invisible, underestimated, and used, finally felt the weight of life's full presence. He stepped into it fully, deliberately, and with quiet strength.